Welcome back to the Coffin Lounge podcast. I'm your host, VampireKitten, and today I am here with a witchpreneur, like a spiritual entrepreneur. Her name is Christina Quick. Welcome to the show. I've actually been really excited to talk to you, mainly because I think what you do is fascinating, and I think that other people would also think that what you do is fascinating.
Thank you so much for having me, VK. It's a pleasure to be here. We've been looking forward to this for a long time, since like last September when we met up. So me and VK met up at a paranormal convention that we did in St. Joe last September. And it was really cool because we actually realized we have a lot of things in common. A lot of the things we were selling are very, very similar. And we just kind of hit it off. And actually, I've been following you as Omniferal, online.
Right.
And so I knew the brand, but I didn't know the person behind the brand. So it was really a treat for me that I got to meet you, and I'm glad that we got to connect.
Well, I was really excited when I met you because I felt like we were two peas in a pod for sure. Like I bought snake stuff, I bought plants. You were like the first starting path of my plant journey because you were. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. Now I have too many. Of course, you can never have too many plants.
It's easy. It's easy to get overwhelmed very, very quickly because you're like, I can handle this. And then, you go to water on Sundays or something, and it's like 45 minutes later, and you're like, oh, well, maybe
we should get rid of a couple of these guys, pass them on. So I'm actually fascinated with what you do. You're a psychic business coach. You're a dark witch mentor, and you are the creatrix behind Blackthorn Witches, which is a coven, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you explain a little bit about, I guess let's start from the beginning. How did you get started on this path of like helping other people on this path, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I grew up, I was always interested in witchy things. I am also a shaman. So I dream things. I see other spirits, other entities. I'm a spirit medium as well. So I've always been extremely in tune to my psychic abilities. Luckily, I grew up in a household with a single mother who was very encouraging of those types of things. So I grew up outside of the church, which was really nice. So early on, I got to explore a lot of alternative spirituality. And so then I did like everything, everybody else does. You kind of put it away. I realized really quickly that people had two reactions. Either they were really scared when certain things would happen. If you're just around psychic people, psychic things just happen. When you're around witchy people, it's a lifestyle. And I didn't quite realize how open I was with that and how quite closed everybody else was with that. And so we kind of learn to kind of stuff our weirdness down so we can be more palatable for other people. Because I was definitely bullied in high school and middle school for being queer, but also being witchy and being psychic. And, how does she know that? And she thinks she's so much better than it was really difficult for me. And so I stuffed it all down. I went to college. I became a salon manager. I always wanted to do something creative. I never really felt like I knew what I wanted to do in my life, honestly. Like I always felt like I was like kind of listlessly just kind of floating. There was nothing that I felt like, oh yeah, that's the career path I want for myself. So I ended up going to beauty school and learned how to do hair because I felt like it would be a good creative outlet. And it was during that time in like the early 2000s where emo was so popular. And so I was one of the only stylists that would take the emo kids. So I was doing like fantasy colors and crazy haircuts and doing these weird, obscure things that nobody else would do. And I kind of made a name for myself. And that kind of demographic, as a hair artist, you tend to attract kind of weird people when you work within that. And I realized that the people that I was attracting were people that also felt like I did, that I couldn't talk about my weirdness, And so I really found a place for myself in creating a safe place for weird people. And I realized that hair was not going to be the way that I could really make an impact in this world. So I ended up kismet, right? I ended up being laid off from my job in 2011. And I was also going through it was a dark night of the soul situation for me, truly. I had lost my job. My husband lost his job. We got evicted. Our cars got
Oh my
repossessed. We were
gosh.
like negative thousands of dollars in our bank accounts. My husband's father passed away, where I was his main caregiver. And I was going through all of our things, right? And I found my old tarot card deck. And I was probably about 24 when this happened. And I was in a really low time in my life. And it, for just a brief moment, my tarot card deck that I had forgotten about really brought me a sense of peace. And I was like, and I remember thinking back, you remember the old call me now for your free reading
Miss
for Miss
Cleo.
Cleo commercials?
Right.
And I was like, I wonder if that's still a thing. I'm going to go try it. So I ran upstairs and I Googled psychic hotlines. I applied to the first one that I found. I got hired within 48 hours. And then
What?
since 2011, 2012, I've been in the psychic witchy world full time, living my purpose, helping other weird people embrace their woo and show up, just being more confident with themselves and not feeling like they have to dismantle who they are or shove things aside that makes our weird, creepy hearts really, really, really happy just in order to be accepted and to make a living in this world. So it's, for me, it was, how can I find a way to live my truth, but also be financially compensated for it? And how can I help other people do that as well?
That's incredible. So that's a whirlwind. You really found
It
your
was.
path. Like, that's wild. There's also something to be said. I want to backtrack a little bit. There's something to be said about the weird kids in high school, because I feel like they all are now either have moved past that, like it was a phase, mom, but then there's the ones that it wasn't a phase, where it was like, okay, I want to be a musician, or I want to be a spooky person, or I want to make special effects makeup, or I want to, stuff like that. And I'm just like, I'm so glad they let their flag fly, like whatever that is. And I feel like this is a perfect example of it. But bullying in school is not cute. Like, it's not cute.
No.
And some people got bullied out of their alternative space, and some people are just like embracing it. They're like, I guess I'm just the weird kid then. And it always cracks me up, because the weird kids are the funnest, most interesting ones you want to go out and hang out with, party with, and have the most interesting careers, I think.
I felt like if I had to work a job for the next 40 years, 9 to 5, that I felt like I didn't want to be on this planet. If that was the only thing that was available to me, I was like, no, I don't want this, And so for me, it really was a life or death situation. And for a lot of alternative kids, it really is a life or death situation. The system is designed to punish people for being too weird, too out there, because it's seen as being a rebel, right? It's seen as rebellion. It's seen as resistance. And so it's a very, very difficult space to be in when you don't subscribe to societal expectations around you, and, internalizing that. And then also being on the other end of abuse and experiencing trauma. And then we wonder why we grow up to be such, adults that have to re-go through, and have psychotherapy and all these things just to feel okay to just simply be able to follow our passions and be in that comfortably and not feel like we have to hide.
Right. Well, so going back to your business, because you whirlwind, figured out what you wanted to do, got it organized. Now you are a psychic business coach.
Yeah.
So you went from psychic hotline, and then what was the turning point there where you were like, okay,
yeah,
I want to help other people do the same thing?
It was the fact that I was able to pay off my mortgage at 27. I went from having negative money in my bank account to making almost $1 million on the psychic hotlines over just the course of a couple of years. And I realized that it was very profitable. I mean, I would log in for 2 hours and come away with $400, and that's it. And so I realized really quickly how fast I could make money. And I also realized, because the feedback system, like, you get rated, and I just was naturally good at it. And so And I really feel like that has a lot to do with my autism because I'm an autistic person, and autistic people are also empathic. They're highly sensitive people. And so they're just naturally inclined to this kind of work, right? And I think that autistic people, we work so hard to learn how to mask and how to be social. And we really look at interactions as really like in a scientific way, like, okay, this is what this person is expecting from me. And so I learned very quickly what to say that people actually liked to hear. Not necessarily like giving false information, but just like the empathy was such an integral part of it, because the reason why people call psychic hotlines is because they're in a low space. They're in a crossroads situation. They've been up all night thinking about a situation, or they're facing something like, they're wanting to choose a different college to go to, or they hate their job and they're like, well, what would happen if I just quit my job? They want to talk to someone that isn't going to give them a logical answer. They want to talk to someone who's going to give them a spiritual answer. And it always goes back to, well, what do you really want? So it's different than therapy in a way, but it's very similar as well. And so I learned that I was very, very good at empathy, at active listening. I had to learn things like nonviolent communication. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept at all. It's where we learn how to adjust our language so that we aren't like pushing people to do something, but just encourage them. So it would be the difference between saying, you should do this versus, well, you could consider this as a possible option, right?
Right.
And so I had to learn neuralistic programming. And so that kind of that's how I went into coaching, is learning, okay, how do I increase empathy? How do I increase active listening? How do I become more of an empathic point of connection for these people? Because that's ultimately at the end of the day what they're craving, and what they call and pay the $10 a minute to talk to someone, right? And so then I realized, oh, this is a great opportunity. And I've always been so connected with my mother, who's a single mother who struggled, that I also saw that, if I can make $400 or $500 in a day doing this, I can help single mothers. I can help people that are in domestic abuse situations. I can help people that are in low economic situations around them. I can help people who don't have traditional skills, but maybe have intuitive skills, right? I can help people who have disabilities. A lot of my clients are disabled. A lot of them are wheelchair bound, or they have terminal illnesses, or they have, some kind of disability where they still want to make an impact. They still want to help people, and they don't want to just collect a disability check, if that makes sense. They still want to be of value, right? And so I learned and that's how I opened up Psychic Hotline School. That was about 2014. So then I started helping people get on the lines. And, I would have people come in that were homeless, and within 6 months start making $10,000 a month on the psychic hotlines, completely changed their life. I'm getting chills just thinking about it, because that's incredible. Like what I do this for. Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, I've reached my pinnacle point. Because the psychic hotlines are not great. There is abuse on there. Some people are mentally ill. It's just sometimes a hostile environment, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody wants predictions and things like that. And when you read tarot cards, you really go into it thinking, gosh, I really just want to help people. And at a certain point, predictions and timelines and things like that, it comes to a certain point where it becomes enabling, and it doesn't become so much, as something helpful that's going to help someone change their life, right?
Right.
So I said, okay, now 2015 or so, I got off the psychic hotlines as my full-time job. I started working with people as a spirit medium in my own business. And then I realized that what I really loved helping people with was when they asked me, what is my life purpose? Because that question for me just was like so expansive and open-ended. I felt like that's where I finally felt like my purpose was helping people find their purpose, which ultimately it all goes back to awakening your psychic gifts and helping other people, making the world a better place, right? Healing our own trauma, healing our own abandonment wounds, our own rejection wounds, all these kind of things that we're all just kind of big kids walking around damaging other people because we're not doing the inner work, right? So I really wanted to help people do that inner work so they could be a person of value in this world, not a person who takes, but a person who gives. It's really important for me to be a person who gives. And so that's kind of where that turning point was for me.
So the prophet or the tarot biz mentor, that is your basically kind of telling people or helping people find their own paths. I like what you have on here. I'll put all of your links in the description so people can find it. But what you have is really interesting stuff like rituals in magic and marketing and redefining your purpose in magic and marketing and clearing money blocks. But it's like witchy, but also business. And I love that. Yes. That is such a vibe.
You know, about 7 years ago, the market was flooded with people like me. And I noticed something. When COVID hit, everybody left. I am one of the only people. There's like a handful of us.
What do you think happened?
That are left. Shit got real. Life got real. And, you know, I think a lot of people get into like business and marketing and spirituality because they think they're going to get rich quick. Mm-hmm. And they think it's going to be easy and airy-fairy and light and fluffy and things like that. And it is when life's going great. But when life isn't going great and the world is in disarray and you're dealing with real stuff that's scary, like pandemics and, you know, things like that, I think it's an inauthenticity thing. I think a lot of people don't walk their talk. And for me, I was one of the only, and in fact, my business doubled during COVID because everybody was at home searching for a way to feed their family. And so that's when I got people on Psychic Hotline School. That's when I started helping people, really stepping into that role of helping people set up those businesses like tarot readings on Etsy, you know, and things like that. Teaching people how to monetize their psychic abilities, their intuitive gifts, without having to rely on the system, without having to rely on an outside economy. My goal has always been to create a niche economy and to help put money into our own witchy economy so that we can really build, you know, something substantial for ourselves, for this alternative lifestyle that we live.
I have a little sidebar for you. There is a lot going on. Well, first of all, COVID really was make it or break it. That weeded out a lot of things. And I feel like we kind of, as a people, needed that sort of reset. I always joke. It's not, COVID was obviously not a joke, but I always say it was awful, but I always say it was the best and worst thing to happen in my life. Yes. Because it had made me realize what I truly wanted. And what I truly wanted was to be myself, to be authentically myself, to start things like this podcast and to do things that I wanted to do and to move on with my life and to become, you know, an artist, whatever, what have you, whatever everybody's path was. I feel like it was a make it or break it moment for people where they were like, well, shit, this is not what I want. And I'm glad that all the inauthentic ones weeded themselves out. However, now we have witch talk, which is a lot of inauthentic people. But, you know, I digress.
It has its place. It's fun. It has its place.
But going back to it, there was I kind of made mention of this on another podcast. There was a woman in Pennsylvania who was fighting the state because fortune telling is illegal in her state. Right. So like how I actually went and I looked up where I currently live. If what I'm doing is illegal, how do people navigate that? Because I know that's probably a side swipe question, but I'm curious to see how you navigate that.
Oh, it's a great question. How to do it ethically. It always, you know, ethics is such an important part of psychic work. And I know that the psychic industry, and we fight a stereotype all the time. And there are going to be bad actors in every single field, right? Mm-hmm. There's always going to be people taking advantage. And in the psychic industry, occasionally you're going to have people that are in their vulnerable moments, right? And unfortunately, you're going to find that people will try to take advantage of people. We have, you know, you've probably had people message you on Instagram, hey, I tapped into your energy and this is going to happen. But, and scammers. And so that's always going to be part of it. But I think that the people that are trying to bring a sense of legitimacy to the psychic and witchy fields are going to be happy to talk about the ethics part of it. It's a sticky subject because On one side, we have to learn how to respect the autonomy of other people and their right to pursue spiritual things and resolutions that make sense to them. But then we also have to realize where certain actions can become predatory. Okay.
Right.
And so what I like to say is that fortune telling is all about absolutes. Someone comes in to you, calls you on the phone and gets a reading and they say, is my husband cheating on me? And you pull the cards, and in the cards, it looks like it's happening. Okay.
Right.
Well, we have to understand as psychics that we can read the intentions, but we can't, but it's a disillusionment to say that yes, this person is cheating. No, this person isn't cheating. And let's just scale that back for a second. Everybody has cheating thoughts. Everybody. Doesn't matter who you are.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer to that question is always going to be yes, because nobody is clean, right? Everybody, and it depends on what other people consider what is cheating, right? So if you smile, if your husband smiles at a lady, some people consider that cheating, and there's this big spectrum of what that actually means.
Interpretation.
Right. And so the key is always never to give absolutes. Yes, this person's cheating. No, this person's cheating. And instead redirect the question to, well, I can tell you what the energy looks like, right? But it would be irresponsible for me as the authority figure in this dynamic, in this situation where you're coming to me for advice, to tell you that your husband's cheating. Because first, I'm going to tell you, go hire a private investigator. If you really want to know, go hire a PI.
Yeah.
Okay? And that may be counterintuitive to what most people come to psychics for, because they tend to think that we have all the answers and things like that. But really, it's not really quite like that. And I always have to tell people, be wary of anyone who tells you that they can know something in absolutes. And that's where you're going to get in trouble, because here's what's going to happen. What if I say, yes, that woman's going to go divorce her husband. They're going to go to court. I'm going to be named as a possible person. I may be pulled into that court case as a person who told them that, their husband was cheating or whatever. And now maybe I'm sued. So it's really only the legal part of it when we start getting into trouble, because the government doesn't want to deal with us. They don't have a place for psychics in court cases. So that's what I would say is the key thing is, first of all, there's going to be bullies who think that no matter what you do, if you crack open a card of decks, you're fortune telling. So really it comes down to education. And so I think that person that you were talking about, they went on, their social media.
They're fighting,
educating people.
Yeah, they're fighting the state. Because it was like a chief of police came into her store one day and hit her with a subpoena or something, saying you're operating an illegal business. Which, I mean, okay, it is a witch shop. This poor woman is just trying to exist. Okay, she has tarot readers in her store. She lives in a small town. And these people were obviously bullying her. It
was obviously a hate crime.
So obviously. So then they pull out. I'm reiterating this for listeners who have not heard this story. But obviously, she was not doing anything. She was not harming anybody. She was just simply existing as a witch.
It's not selling potions for $500 that will cure your
she was not selling snake oil. But
those are those things we stay away from.
This guy dug up a several 100-year-old law about fortune telling and was like, boom, 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 this is what you're doing. And so now she's fighting to get the law.
Vendetta. There was
absolutely.
Personal.
Absolutely. But
and so that shows the sickness with the police department mentality to feel that they can do something like that.
It was
their
ridiculous.
job is to protect citizens, not to.
My question is for him, don't you have anything better to be doing? You are a police officer. You are a chief of police in a small town. I'm sure there's probably drugs, maybe some other things, something more worthwhile to be focusing your energy on.
Religious psychosis.
Right. This poor woman. So she is actually actively trying to get the laws in Pennsylvania changed, which is awesome. Good for her. Love her. I can't
I'm not
remember.
strong enough for that, but
She
wow.
is.
Wow.
I follow her story. I'm still following her story because she posts periodic updates, and she's obviously like still fighting it, and she's got a good lawyer and all this stuff. But like, that's hard. How do you navigate something like that? Like, you just can't.
Money. You have to have money because or support. Because the system is set up to punish people like us, and it's not set up to support people like us. And unfortunately, witches and alternative people have always typically been marginalized financially. That's just reality. And so they know we're easy targets. And, you know, they have these places where they go on Sundays and they have free reign of hate speech against people like us. And so it's a sickness, it's an illness, it's a cancer within our society that we allow this to happen, and then it bleeds into an area where people are supposed to protect us. It's because, you know, he had to go above and beyond to find
her
legislature.
Yeah, that too. Like her, and like I don't even know how he found her, other than the fact that she's a witch operating in a small town, and he just didn't like it. I always think
it's just a dude that was attracted to her, but has internalized misogyny, and so, you know, I mean, I could go into the psychology of
I'm not going to speak on that, but yes, stranger things have happened.
Yeah, we always have to wonder when masculines come after feminines. You always have to wonder, because it's not normal.
The whole situation just feels weird. Like, weird. He
thought he was going to get a star for that. He thought he was going to get a badge for that. He was going to be a hero.
No, I'm glad she's fighting it though. Like, I'm so proud of her. Like, I don't even know her. She doesn't even know me, but I'm proud of her. Actually, it'd be cool to have her on the show. But
she's a hero.
She is a hero. Going back to witch business, right? As somebody who's currently now kind of migrating a little bit more on that path, do you have advice for people? Just something simple, doesn't have to be crazy. People on that path, like starting their witchy business. Like, hey, you are a witch. You want to make money on this. What is your little nugget of advice?
Don't do products, do services, because products are a sinkhole for money. And you'll never really know. And the benefit of selling products with these big box stores is that they have a lot of products, so they can do A/B testing to see which products they have the money and the disposal, the ability to dispose of that money. We do not. We're just people. We're not Amazon. We're not Walmart. So we have to be very intentional. If you are going to do a product line, it needs to be super niche. It needs to be no more than, say, maybe 10 different products. Because I feel like what happens is the witches that want to sell oils and salts and candles and things like that is they don't have a lot of success selling the oils. So they're like, okay, I've spent $1,500 investing in these oils. That's not working. I'm going to go spend $2,000 and make some candles now. And then they find the same exact thing happens. The answer is not the different products. It's how you market the products that you have and being able to market them as something that's quality over quantity. So it really comes down to the emotional connection between the products that you sell. It's not just about, because the big box stores selling lots of products, like that's their strategy because they have warehouses. We don't, so we have to be super intentional with the products that we do, or skip products altogether. Simply go to services. Services are 100% profit. So that is one of the easiest ways to get started making money, where you don't have to invest a lot of money in like equipment and tools and all that kind of stuff, because frankly that's a pit sometimes of no return. And I'm sure you've been through that as well as a product.
I have. But I found my niche, and I also am I'm a very frugal witch. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes.
But I am, when it comes to the things that I make, a lot of it's art and like so it's very specific, and I think that people come for that very specific, but also I think people are starting to find me as my brand. I rebranded recently, like within the last 4 years, because I used to be Steam Wolf Symphony, and I used to do like primarily cosplay stuff and things, but I've kind of grown out of that, and my business has changed a lot. And I feel like I've figured it out. It's taken a long time, but I feel like I figured it out. But I was smart when it came to not sinking in thousands of dollars into stuff. I did test runs on products and things like that. So like I took my time with it.
You need that marketer's mind. You
Mhm.
have to have some sort of business idea in order to make this, actually work.
Well, and I also
not
still
just
had
take
side
7
jobs.
years to, yeah. And,
I mean,
there's no shame in that.
Mhm.
There's absolutely no shame in that. We all need to do that sometimes. And then the other piece of advice I would give people is, you need to educate people on why they need your services. I think too often, our services or products. I think too often we create a product or service and we feel that and it's complete and we're like, okay, why aren't people lining up to buy this, right? And so what we do as marketers, as witchy business people, is we need to educate people on the value of the product, and that's not always like, so okay, let's take a product for example, a witchy oil, okay,
Right.
like a witchy oil, okay.
Mhm.
Now, say I'm selling this at fairs or something like that. People are walking by and they're like, what is that for? I don't even know what that's for. Like they just, people just don't, but it could be something helpful for them, but they're not sure how to use it and things like that. So what you might do is create a YouTube channel where you're showing 10 different ways to use your oils. Or, you're talking about why you choose certain ingredients and things like that. I think a lot of people hide behind their products and they don't bring their person to the front. And I think what people forget is that people buy you, they don't buy your product.
Right.
So the reason why I even go to your events is because you're you. It's not about the quality of your products. And don't take offense to this, but I could actually care less. I would buy something from you if it was, the top quality. I would buy something from you if it was just some cheap little thing. I'm not buying that product. I'm buying you.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people don't understand that concept of, yes, you may have a product business, you may have a service business, but ultimately at the end of the day, what people buy is your energy.
That's a fact. That is a fact.
Yep.
People,
they want to be like you. Like,
yeah.
I see the photos that you put out and I'm like, oh, I love that magic. I love that energy. I want to buy me some of that because then I can have some VK
right
in my aura and in my space. And so that's an important part of selling, is those connections that we make with people.
And I will say I have noticed since my rebrand within the last few years of like putting myself out there more, totally different situation. It went from night to day, like so different. And I do quality over quantity. I think that's important. But I also know that, like, my partner even tells me, I know this is crazy. He goes, babe, they're going for you. They're not going for whatever you're doing. And it's just like, I always have to remind myself that because I don't think I'm anything special. Like, that's
where the witch wound comes in. That's where that.
Oh, here we go. Let's migrate into this. Actually, perfect segue. I don't think that I am anything special, but other people seem to think that.
But you are. And the only thing preventing you from accepting that is your willingness to accept it. That's it.
Which I'm doing better, I will say.
And, so we spend so much time being in delusion about how fat we are, how stupid we are, how, we think about the stupid things and awkward things that we say to people and how everyone thinks we're just some big fat idiot all the time. And so we spend so much time programming that negative voice that the moment people start telling us that they love our energy, that they see the value in us, we start sabotaging ourselves. And I have seen this so many times where I'll start working with them in their business. They'll start getting the sales. They'll start getting everything that they ever wanted. And then all of a sudden they feel like shit about it because they can't process, their aura cannot handle all those positive vibes. So I like to say we do therapy not so we can get over all the bad shit that ever happened to us, but so we can accept all the good stuff that is still yet to come to us, right? And so that's where that deservingness comes in, that moment where things start working and we start following our passion. And, people are telling you how much they love your energy, how much they appreciate you, how much you help them. And there's always that voice in the back of your head that says, they're lying. They're lying to me. That's not true. There's no way I could help that person this much. And it's like that inner critic, right?
Right.
And so we really have to aggressively and fiercely go to war and go to battle with that inner critic, because otherwise we can have, and I've seen people go from having nothing to having everything and still feeling like nothing has changed in their life.
Right.
It's because it's an inside job. It's an internal thing. And just because you all of a sudden now have a nice house, or you have the car, or you have, the business is generating 6 figures or more every year, you need to be able to increase your threshold to handle those positive experiences. Otherwise, you're going to sabotage yourself every single time.
So I think that's an interesting point. So this goes to you call this the creature wound, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain just in the layman's terms, what is a creature wound?
So we all feel, all of us who identify as being alternative, we all feel othered by society. We all feel like we're the black sheep of the family, or what I say, the rainbow technicolor sheep of the family, because that's me. Yeah. And so we've gone through life, especially early childhood, where we've been in a situation where we've been bullied, or we've received trauma, or we've lost friends for our weirdness, or we finally get brave enough to speak our truth, and then we're met with resistance, and we're met with like bullying and things like that. So we have learned through trauma that talking about ourselves, expressing ourselves, especially neurodivergent people with ADHD, ADD, autism, all of those labels that we use to just describe normal people, but we need those labels because there's this idea that there's some normal out there, right? And it's perpetuated by the system. So the creature wound, I started first with a psychic wound, because you would not imagine how many people are so psychic but will not claim the psychic because of all of the stereotypes that go along with it. Because they're like, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy. They're going to think I'm a witch. They're not going to let their kids play with my kids. I'm going to lose friends that are ultra religious. And yes, that's true. And then it's an unfortunate thing, and it does happen. And so we kind of learn that through this wound, that we have to kind of buckle down and kind of shy ourselves away and shrink and shrink and shrink until we don't know who we are anymore. And then I started working with witches, and the witch wound is incredibly profound because we have the burning times, we have the Salem witch trials, we have the the Crusades, where there was literally times in history where mass people were killed for being allegedly witches, right? So there's that fear of persecution, there's that fear of judgment, there's that fear of being, because back in those days, the community aspect was everything. If you were kicked out of the village, you no longer had access to bread, milk, vegetables, water, healthcare, all of the things that you need to survive. So that's why there's this trope of the witch living on the edge of the village, because she's been pushed out, right?
Right.
And so there's this overwhelming fear of rejection, and we are a communal species. So that is like devastating to our psychology. Now, the creature wound is something that I've kind of recently started working within. I've always worked with people who have associated themselves with like archetypal labels such as like vampire or werewolf or mermaid or angel, or all of these different types of labels that we use to describe an energetic frequency of what that might mean. So vampire, so VK, you can tell us what vampire means. Like, and what does a vampire mean? What's the label mean?
Typically, there's a lot. Vampire community is essentially a group of people who've gotten together, kind of like a group of witches, but they're their own type of energy. Basically, that's basically what it is. There's nothing really more
within that. There are things like values, there are things like ethics, there are things like beliefs, there are things like codes of conduct. There are all those things that labels help us really identify very quickly what someone is about, what their energy is about, how to approach them, how to work with them. Right? So the creature wound expands. A witch is just another sort of creature. Right. The psychic is just another sort of creature, the clairvoyant, right? So the creature wound is a really all-encompassing for all of the others out there that deal with feelings of being, fears of being persecuted, fears of being judged for who they are, fear of abandonment, that the people that they love and respect are not going to return that. And I think that the most devastating thing at the creature wound, the witch wound, at these wounds, is the realization is that people may not love us as much as we love them. And that can be a very difficult pill to swallow when you are a very accepting person of anybody. Like, I love anybody. Like, there's nobody that really, it's silly in my brain to try to micromanage and try to think that everybody should be like me. That's silly. That's like dumb. Like, how boring would that be, right? And so I love people that know who they are, and they work within this framework of being a creature, whatever that kind of looks like. And realizing that once we kind of heal those wounds and step into ourselves more confidently, all of this opportunities, situations, and people that are going to fall away as that happens. And it can be a very stark reality for a lot of people to realize that they've been putting more into relationships and situations from a heart-centered place than they have ever received. And it's that reciprocity that people don't receive when they start working through those wounds and they start becoming more of themselves, and they start getting this resistance. And I think that's what keeps most people from actually going deeply into this, as far as like acting this out in certain psychotherapy or psychodrama ways, doing shadow work, as we call it, in the witchy world, right? And so that, I think, is probably the most devastating thing. But on the other side of that is complete liberation and complete freedom of not giving a fuck about anything people have to think about you. And it's like, how sick do we get? I had skin cancer, so I have this cancer survivor. I also have autoimmune issues. I also am a spoonie. I deal with chronic illness all the time. And so much of that has healed just because of I'm no longer under the duress and stress of trying to mold myself to fit into every single interaction of the day to make sure that I am acceptable, or people approve of me, or people validate me. And instead, I've taken that energy and I've said, you know what? I'm not concerned about fitting in. I'm going to go find my own community. And if I can't find my community, I'm going to create one.
Mm-hmm. So the same could also be said for anybody that's listening to the show that is not in an alternative space, but they are, in fact, a black sheep of their family, right? Yeah. I mean, it
doesn't have to be metaphysical. It can just be, maybe you're into true crime and your friends think that that's weird. Or maybe you're a health nut and you go to the gym all the time and people think that you have an eating disorder. Anything that brings you passion, that makes you seem weird to other people, I think some of us are so attracted to the creature archetypes like witch, vampire, and things like that because it's an extreme. And so within that extreme, there's a level of safety and comfort because you know that other people around you are also within that extreme. So there's less masking that we have to do, less explaining that we have to do.
I feel like people don't think about why we love monsters enough.
It's true.
We don't. We have all of these creatures that we grew up with. We have Wolfman, we have the Mummy, we have Dracula, we have Frankenstein. We have all of these creatures who, to the alternative person, typically, those creatures fall under misunderstood, misguided, sad, lonely. They all have some sort of, inside out feeling, if that makes sense.
Yes. Number 2 is coming out. I'm really excited to go watch that.
I really liked the first one. I felt like it was really good. But I mean, it's similar. If you put them on a Venn diagram of emotions, all of these monsters connect to some sort of emotion. And I think that it is interesting that people don't psychologically consider that when they're watching horror movies or when they're watching monster movies. I always connected with the monsters more than I connected with the people, because why are all these people attacking these monsters? What did they do? They're different.
They're just living within their instinct, right? And that's offensive to some people.
And so I think it's fascinating that you had mentioned that, and I think this kind of really just flows along with that, and I think that is awesome. Like, that is so cool. What an interesting way of looking at wounds and trauma, actually. I hope some people get something from this, because I feel like that's a good, it's like a baseline for shadow work, really.
Yes.
So we never really talk about shadow work on the show. Shadow work, going back to Witch Talk, shadow work has become very popular on Witch Talk, and on even, I've been getting ads for shadow work journals. I've been getting ads for shadow work oils. I've been getting short work ads for shadow work candles. It's gone off the deep end on TikTok.
Yeah, it's definitely mainstream for sure.
So the fact that mainstream people are talking about shadow work is crazy to me. That's wild. But I don't think people quite understand.
In some ways,
it's great.
Psychology has really failed people like us, because psychology is there to bring you back to a state of normalcy.
Right.
It's not there to, it's not there to help you encourage and explore your uniqueness.
So I think going back to it a little bit, I think it's interesting because therapy is expensive. People are looking for alternatives, and shadow work has sort of become kind of an alternative for that. But I don't think people
therapy.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think people are quite understanding what shadow work is and what it is for, and I don't think that there's enough definition there. What is shadow work to you, I guess, is my question.
Shadow work is when we look at habits and routines that we lock ourselves into that don't necessarily bring about the best version of ourselves, and being able to recognize through pattern recognition, recognize those patterns of self-sabotage, and just gently poke and prod that and ask ourselves, why do we do that? Where did I learn that? Who taught me that? Why do I respond like that? So it's a self-questioning tactic, and it really helps us take the pain of trauma or a feeling, say jealousy or insecurity or something like that, take it outside of ourselves, contextualize it as something that exists outside of ourselves, and then be able to look at it and say, why do you exist? Without internalizing us as the failure point. It kind of helps us take these emotions, bring them outside of our body, and question them and say, why are you like this? Why do you keep doing this? And not, why do I keep doing this? Why am I like this? Right? It helps us to kind of remove ourselves from the trigger and just gently treat it. I often treat my triggers like a child, right? Well, what's got you? What are the emotion that you're feeling? Why do you think you feel this way? And so when I do that, I extend a level of compassion to myself that regular psychology and psychotherapy doesn't really offer. And for a lot of neurodivergent people, I think this is a healthier and very traumatized people and marginalized people. I feel like this is an easier way to go about it when you're not within the expectation of someone sitting across from you. Oh, that's very interesting. Writing it down. Yeah. And you feel like you're being judged. That can be very triggering right there. And so it gives us back our autonomy when it comes to examining feelings or habits that we might have. For example, 3 a.m., I love to go in the fridge and eat cheese, but I would also really love to lose 20 pounds. So I have to ask myself, how, why, and where did that come from? For some people, it's not trauma.
It's comfort.
For some people, it's love.
Oh, yeah.
It's comfort, it's self-love. And so, and then asking yourself, what is this bringing out the best quality? Is this pushing me in a path that's leading me to who I want to be? Or is this bringing me just a minor comfort for right now? And you know what? The best thing about shadow work is there's no wrong answer.
Right.
It can be everything. But I think when we bring a certain level of awareness to it, it doesn't control us as much anymore. Shadow work is a conversation between your conscious mind and your subconscious behaviors. So when we have those communication devices such as journaling or lighting a candle or making a shadow work potion or something like that, It's a way we interact with our subconscious mind in allyship rather than trying to diagnose it as something wrong or off or bad, right?
Right. I think that people could also take some, I guess what I'm kind of going towards is I think people need to be kinder to themselves.
Yeah.
I think that I have learned over the past few years, going back to what I said, where like, why are people even coming to see me? I have been practicing in the last couple of years being kinder to myself, doing kind things for myself that aren't necessarily like going for a walk. That's me being kind to myself, you know, or spending more time painting or spending more time with my dogs. And instead of, you know, couch rotting or bed rotting or sleeping because I'm depressed, whatever, brushing my teeth in the morning, even little depression things that
For neurodivergent people,
think about.
hygiene is hard.
That's what I'm saying. Like, being kind to yourself and doing something nice for yourself doesn't necessarily have to be buying yourself something. It's go wash your face, go brush your teeth, go take a shower. If it makes you feel better, practice being kinder to yourself. And I think that is a very important lesson that I have learned in the last, like, since COVID, being kinder to myself and not taking things that I do, like not harming myself in ways of, I guess, inactivity. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, if inactivity is something that, you know, contributes to you not feeling well, then we know it's a problem. Right. Whereas for other people who are workaholics, inactivity might be their prescription.
Right.
Couch rotting might be the thing that they need to do.
Take some time.
Yes. And so it's so individual, and it just really depends on the individual person, you know? And that's what I love about shadow work is that it's so individualized. There's not like a protocol or diagnostic manual that tells you how to treat something. It's really getting back to the heart of empathy and really getting back to the heart of connection with people. And I feel like this world, I mean, if you think about the last 100 years, this world has gone crazy. I mean, we were not biologically engineered for the world as it is right now. I believe that fully. We are inundated with so much marketing, so much stimulus on a daily basis. We're literally all just children trying to figure this out. And so I feel like that's a big reason why there's such a mainstream commitment to witchiness and shadow work and, you know, all that kind of stuff right now, because as a society, we truly are sick. And the only way we're going to learn to get better is, like you said, being kinder to ourselves, developing that emotional intelligence to be able to discern within ourselves what is contributing to this negativity and how can I improve upon it. And, you know, every single day trying to make things a little bit better. There's a really big phrase that I really love. It's called spiritual bypassing. Have you ever heard of that phrase before?
I don't think so.
Oh, good. Okay. Let me tell you about spiritual bypassing. So spiritual bypassing is also a concept of basically not viewing everything as love and light all the time. So there's this tendency for ourselves to say, oh, just think positive, you know, and that will change your life. Or the one I really love is when they tell people with chronic illness that the reason that they're sick is because for some spiritual reason and not biological, right? So it's kind of like dismissing pain as being something that you can kind of just think your way out of. And unfortunately, that's not true. And I think that's another key reason why a lot of these people left during COVID, because like I said, stuff got real and they could not handle it. They did not have the emotional and intellectual ability to process this because they were so involved in like the love and light, what I call the love and light dynamic, which that there is a place for love and light, and love and light is perfect. And it's always a good idea to remember that everything's love and everything's light.
There's balance.
But when you're in the in the breakdown, no amount of love and light is going to help you, baby. It's about being able to be real with where you are. And I think a lot of people are starting to understand that. And I think the church is one of the most guilty people when it comes to like the love and light, just pray it away. And it's not working. It's not working for people. So that's, you know, spiritual bypassing is where we tell people that their source of pain is just because they just don't love themselves enough. And that is so harmful especially to someone who's already energy of being, it's not trauma informed work. So I think, I'm realizing as I'm talking to you right now, VK, that a lot of my work is trauma informed. And I think that that's a key right now, as far as really helping people and giving people the tools to empower themselves to just become happier. And it's never about healing. It's just about becoming, remotely happier every single day until eventually it becomes a habit. And then, you wake up one day and your whole life changes. Has that ever happened to you where you wake up and you're like, oh, this doesn't bother me anymore?
Yeah. I've had,
Yeah.
yes.
And you're just huge shift. You're just like, why did I spend 4 years in that dark place about this? Like, it does not even matter. And it's that daily incremental shadow work that we do, examining it, looking into it, probing it, being gentle with it. And then eventually your inner child, it's all inner children. It's all inner child work. And eventually your inner child's like, I'm safe. I don't have to worry about this anymore. I trust you. You're the adult in this situation. You can take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
So at the core of it, it's all about inner child work, really, and making a safe place for your inner child to thrive.
So shadow work, it sounds like it's very important to you. How did that have something to do with the creation of your coven? Like, how did we get from business, psychic hotline business, coven?
So there's always been a part of me, which is a really witchy part of me, that I've always wanted to express professionally. Over the years, I have joined covens on and off, and I've always felt like there's always been serious problems with the covens I've joined. A lot of them, and there's no problem. It's a problem for me. It's not a problem for everybody else. I want to make that very clear.
You have to find your people.
You do. And then you're looking for certain things, and you have certain expectations. And I'm an old witch. I've been a witch since the 1998 when I bought Teen Witch by Silver Ravenwolf. I mean, that's how long I've been witching.
Oh, I haven't heard that name in years. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I got whiplash. I got witchlash.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's dumb.
Yeah. She's an OG. She's one of the originals, that brought us in. When the Craft came out, it was like the Craft and Silver Ravenwolf, and that was like the 90s witches. That's us today. So pop culture is always a good thing, even if people don't like it, because it helps people eventually find their path.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, I have a really good friend, Madam Z. You know her as Susie.
Love Susie.
And so, yeah, she was actually a client of mine. We started working together virtually about 10 years ago. She told me one day she was moving up to Kansas City. I was like, nuh-uh. She's like, yeah, I'm going to move up there. And I'm like, oh my God. So she moved up to St. Joe. And so we started doing in-person things now. And so she has also ran covens for many, many, many years. And she's also got like an extra 10 years on me as far as witching goes. And so she's very, very knowledgeable. And she has like a different, I go more of like Carl Jung, shadow work. Witchcraft is more of a psychodrama for me, and then there's the lighting the candles and all that. That's like last, for her, that's really more of a forte. That's like her thing. She's very much into the ritual aspect of it. Mm-hmm. I design the rituals, she hosts them. So we've been talking back and forth about how we've been wanting to join a coven, but every time we get up with people, it's like either they're New Agers or it's like Christianity kind of like wrapped up with a witchy flair to it, or they're just kind of like free for all crunchy mamas, and they're not, it's not really witchcraft, organized witchcraft per se.
Yeah.
In the early 90s and the early 2000s, we had, do you remember Witchvox?
I actually, I just visited Witchvox, like, because people were talking about it.
Yeah.
They're like, I can't.
Well, that's the only way we found each other.
Yeah.
That was the only resource that we had.
That's it.
Yeah, and that was it. And so, this is early on. And then I went to like some pagan schools and got to the 3rd degree and got all my trainings and things like that to be a high priestess and stuff. And so while I'm running my business, like I'm doing this on the side as my own personal thing, Right. And I felt like, especially with Z moving here, I'm like, okay, maybe I'm mature enough and ready enough. Because when you run a coven, it's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. So much work that goes into it, designing the rituals, making sure it's a safe space for everybody, setting the code of conduct, the boundaries, the energetic space, making sure everybody's heard and being available, educating. There's so much that goes into running a coven. Now, since she's up in St. Joe and I'm here in Lee Summit, so it's like we're like an hour and a half kind of difference. So it doesn't really make sense for us to get together like to do an in-person thing. We're like, well, you know what? Let's do like a hybrid in-person and virtual coven where it's virtual, but we have like an in-person element with me and Z, right? And whoever else wants to join us. And so when we were talking about how to create this coven, we were talking about all of the things that's really important to us that goes into a coven. And for me, it's organized witchcraft. And learning, kind of like going back to the basics, learning those original skills, because I feel more like if you learn the original skills, then you have a base of knowledge, then you can go off-roading with your witchcraft and you can do whatever you want. But having a basic understanding of what a ritual is, what are the elements with inside of a ritual, how do you open a ritual, how do you close it, you know, what are the activities that kind of go along within that. And so for us, I really wanted to tie it all back down to shadow work. So we were like, okay, shadow work for witches. Well, what are some of the triggers around witchcraft? Okay, so some of the triggers around witchcraft are things like summoning demons, making pacts with entities, speaking to the dead, necromancy, divination, the art of fortune telling, and things like that. These are all kind of scary things that, you know, witches tend to kind of shy away from. So we were talking like, we're going to create a coven that's about giving witches a safe place to explore these more taboo kind of subjects. Because the worst thing in the world is for a witch to be afraid of her power, in my opinion. Right. So I really wanted to like take people up to the precipice of an edge, not throw them off, but ask them if they want to jump just a little bit, you know, and hold their hand while we're jumping into talking about things like working with the Ars Goetia and working with the Solomon, some, you know, the demonic spirits of that, working with angels. And the reason why I even say demons is because that's what gives everybody a fright. Everybody has such a strong reaction to that. And that's what I wanted to do. And I wanted to have a very strong, visceral, fear-based reaction to what you would learn in this coven. Right. Because the idea is that you're going to come in and then you're going to learn some wicked cool skills, and you're not going to be scared of yourself. You're not going to be scared of the spiritual realm anymore. You're going to be in control of that. And I feel like a witch who is in control of their magic is a very feral and fierce creature.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Yeah. So
it's like the witch wound to the, you know,
to the
millionth
max.
Degree. Yeah, it's extreme. And I love extremes. I do.
So when you started this a couple months ago, how is it going? Yeah. Do you have do you have a good turnout in person? Do you have a good turnout in virtual? Are you doing a mix of people? Mm-hmm. How does it work?
So we have 9 people in the coven right now. And Z and I, it was really important for us to not take a lot of people because I want to make sure I'm making a relationship with every single person that comes in. We said, we'll take up to 13, but we're not doing more than 13. Mm-hmm. We had 9, including me and Z. So we had 7 people, 7 ladies come in. And so we're kind of like beta testing this. I'm literally writing the program as we go along. So we meet up once a month and we do over Zoom. We do a live call. Now, sometimes I will travel up to St. Joe or Z will travel down here. So sometimes me and her are together for it. We definitely consider ourselves, I'm the high priest, she is the high priestess. So it's my job to create a safe place for the high priestess to do the channeling, right? My job is more like administrative, creating the documents, writing the rituals. Her job is to embody what we work with is called the Dark Mother. The Dark Mother is basically a conglomeration of the witch wound. It's all of the suffering, all of the pain, all of the trauma of women and feminines, not just women, but people who identify with feminine work, feminine
energy, right?
Feminine energy, to be able to explore that. And so we meet once a month. We have Coven Movie Night once a month. In fact, Coven Movie Night is tonight. We're watching The Crucible because, I'm sworn to secrecy, so I can't actually tell you like what we're doing.
No,
but what I can say that the next training that we have, and I'll just tell you this because it's not really like, I'm not giving anything away. the process or anything, but we are going to be doing a group seance to summon the Salem witches.
Cute.
And so we're going to be able to talk to the witches, ask them questions, find out if they were really witches, be able to communicate with, them and things like that. So yeah, and we're doing this as a 6-month program. So for 6 months, we're going to meet. The books I write are about 50 pages each for each month. So they're very in-depth. There's guided meditations, things like that. And it's been a way for me to monetize my witchiness. And it's been so healing for me because I finally have a space where I can do that professionally. And I can sit down and know that I'm getting paid for that work as opposed to just doing it as a hobby. Because once you learn you can get paid for just about anything, I don't know, it's me, but it's really hard for me to do anything for free anymore, if that makes sense.
No,
like doing hobbies for
that.
free. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm at a point now where I feel like I can monetize that in an ethical way. And I feel like I really have something of value to give these people. And so that's what we're doing. And this is like our beta test for our people. So it's closed right now. Nobody can come in. But at the end of 6 months, we're going to reevaluate if we want to run this again. And what we're doing is level 1 is the initiation. So they're going through these specific trials of initiation, like necromancy, summoning spirits, all of these taboo sex and blood magic and things like that. So they're going through these trials. And once they complete the trials, they will be considered a full-fledged member of the coven. And then we're going to actually help them go set up covens in their area where they can utilize our teachings and create their own.
That's cool.
Yeah. So that's really exciting. Yeah.
I don't know if you've been on the KC witch groups lately.
I have mixed feelings, but I see the value. I want to get involved. I'm such an old school witch, and I just don't know.
That's understandable. Totally.
Yeah.
I love these groups, but I'm very arm's length. Like, you guys can do what you're gonna do. You guys can do whatever you want to do. Stay, I recently joined a coven, and I will admit that. And I love my coven, and the people that are in it are incredibly healing. We have had healing moments, we've had trauma moments, we've had growth moments, we've had learning moments. I feel like the people that I'm currently with are incredible women. Is it
like talking stick kind of style where you kind of go round robin and
it's
kind of
not
talk
even
about
that
things?
it just is free flowing.
That's what we do more like that. Yeah,
we're kind of silly, and we're a free flowing whole situation. Like, it works for us.
More intuitive.
Yes, and very intuitive. We are a very intuitive group of women. And it works for us because I don't want to, go into really all of what we do and everything, but it works for us. And I have noticed that there is a big uptick in the KC, because now I'm in charge of KC Witchy Women group a little bit.
Oh,
I'm a moderator.
Congratulations.
I'm a moderator. I'm not like in charge. There's still a bunch of women running it.
You're a leader. You're a leader within the.
And I want to offer some things to the area, and I have been trying to actively been doing that, but there is a huge uptick in women wanting a coven space, and there isn't really. Some of the groups I have been, how do I lightly discuss? Gatekeeping is bad.
Everybody has their own idea of what witchcraft and witch is,
but I don't think that telling people that they are wrong in these settings is right. I think people have to learn themselves. I think witchcraft is a very personal, just being a witch in general, a pagan, whatever, what have you, is a very personal path. And like shadow work, I don't think anybody's path is going to be exact. I think that you can get a little bit from here and there and elsewhere, but I think it's something that you need to really, truly understand is, while we are a group, we are all very individual. And we are all very individual in the practices that we do. But we also
call that eclectic, right?
Yeah.
So it's an eclectic group.
But it is I think that people need to, as they are building covens, understand that everyone is going to be different. And unless you're following something kind of strict, like Wicca is a little strict, or like some sort
That's why the Blackthorn, that's why. So Blackthorn is the name that we made up for our coven. It is It's based off American witchcraft. So it's a conglomeration of traditional American witchcraft practices. And every time that I create a training or something like that, I bring it back to the Blackthorn brand, right? And so it's specifically Blackthorn magic inspired by many different types of magic in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's one distinction why it's going so well and successful. It's because we have that structure there. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to respond to that structure. So, finding a coven and finding one that is in alignment with like what you're trying to get out of it it's definitely a difficult thing to try to do. Yeah. And then you have these love and lighters that come in and they want to tell everybody that they're wrong and that you have to do it this way. And, I just try to remind people everything in the world is made up. It's all made up.
I usually block those people. I've gotten to this point where I'm getting real good at using my block function.
Yeah.
Because I can't sit there and have somebody judging me for what I do when they're like my mantra these last few years has been, if you have the time to judge other people and tell people that they're wrong in what they're on their personal path, or you have some sort of time available. Time is what I don't have. If you have time available to yourself to be rude and shitty to other people, then I don't need you in my life. And you don't need to be in other people's lives. So I just block, gone, you're gone. You're out of my life. I don't have anything to do with you. So that's kind of been my mantra lately. Is this person adding any sort of value to my life? No. Bye.
Absolutely. You know what I did that's really funny? People get a shock out of this, but I instituted a $400 minimum. If you want to argue with me, it's going to cost you $400. Other than that, I'm not participating because I'm going to get paid for that. If you want me to educate you, I will, but I'm going to get paid for that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And that's what you said, time. Time is something that people who are not aligned with their soul purpose have. People who are aligned with their soul purpose, they're trying to figure out how they can create more time, spend it on things they love. They don't have time to sit around and micromanage other people. So I say that's a personality defect. That's a personality disorder. And we don't enable those here. So, yeah. And it's just a maturity. Everybody goes through that. I remember being that person that did that. And it's a form of control. You start learning things and you're like, oh, well, I know all about this. And I'm going to get that dopamine rush by telling other people that they're wrong because I'm right, because I know. And it's just an immature, you don't have that emotional intelligence that you need. And so that's why it's important that when you do join a coven to really vet who you join and make sure that they have some experience being a human on this earth that, is someone who adds value and understands the human relationship to witchcraft and psychotherapy, which is basically what witchcraft is to an extent,
So going back to a little bit about Casey groups, because we are very close, a lot of them are starting their own covens. And I think it's fascinating to see these groups of women. I mean, a couple of them have invited me. I was like, I'm already in one, but I'd love to see like your process. I'd love to see your pictures. I'd love to see what you guys do. If it's open, cool. If you want to post a couple things, cool. If you want to not share anything, that's cool too. Like whatever you want to do. But I would like to encourage people, because it seems like there's a real need for it, for people to create their own groups. Like this has been such a big conversation, but if you want a group, start a group.
Yeah.
Somebody that I know,
but most people won't do the work involved in that because they like the idea of the fantasy of it, but they don't like the reality of the work that goes into it. That's an important distinction.
You need that leadership of like, it's not going to be practical magic all the time. There's going to be administrative work. Like you're going to have to build it.
You're going to have to mow the lawn before you do the ritual on the grass. I mean, there's just certain things that go along into it. And some people don't understand that because they still are in this fantasy world of, witchcraft in movies and things like that.
It's a community contribution as well. I think that's something that people, like if you are going to join a coven, I think that's something that you need to think about. You can't just take. You have to you have to be part of it. You have to commit to it. You have to be involved in your community, because if you're not, like, even if you can't, like, I can't host right now. Even if I could host, it'd be a different story. So I offer other things. I bring so much more to the table that I can bring to the table, and that's my contribution. Or I'll do administrative work, or I'll help set up an event, or, you know, you can't just come and take, is what I'm saying. You have to involve yourself. And I think the important going into this has been a very interesting journey for me, because this is treacherous waters, I guess, is kind of how it feels. Like, this is all very new for me. This is a new path that I'm on. And I think that my advice going into something like this is to make sure that you are fully in it for what you want, but also for what the other people want. Like, you can't just come in and take. You have to give, but also you can't judge. And I think that's like, if somebody wants to do like what you're doing, if somebody wants to like think about, you know, darker, I say darker because I'm along the line. I feel like there's not light without dark. You have to balance that stuff out. But if there are some people that are darker in your circle, don't judge them. They're doing they're on their own path that has nothing to do with you.
Use it as a launching pad to examine why you're uncomfortable with it.
Exactly. Going back to shadow work. Is there anything else I was going to ask you, since we're talking about witchy stuff, what is your favorite method of divination?
So cards are always going to be first and foremost for me, because that's where I learned. So I love cards, tarot cards, oracle cards, Lenormand cards. I love Lenormand cards. They're one of my absolute favorites. They're great for fortune telling and talking more about the mundane things. Tarot cards is my first love, so I'll probably always be a tarot card reader. And it's just so fascinating how it goes back to psychology and Carl Jung and the hero's journey and things like that. And it's just such a great way to I use tarot cards a lot like Rorschach devices, where you're like, what do you see in the picture, you know? And it kind of gives you a clue as to what people are feeling internally. And so it's a very, very open-ended kind of...
It's a really intuitive way to read.
It is. But I just recently started getting into my dowsing rods. Oh my God, I'm so into this. I take these on whenever I do paranormal investigations. I take these on. And because they work without you doing anything to it. So they just do it on their own. And I think that's just so fascinating. So I was going to ask you if you have any questions about the universe. I was going to say, like, maybe we should ask some questions. So a cross would be a yes, and then going apart would be a no. So you can ask like anything. Like, so I'll start us off. Okay.
Okay.
Do aliens exist? Okay. So what I'm getting is one cross, and they're not crossing exactly. So the way that I would read this is yes, but it's a soft yes, and not the way that we think. So we may have this concept of like little gray aliens or something like that. And maybe it's not exactly what aliens might be. But yes, but no, if that makes any sense. Not in the way. So you go ahead. What's a question you have about the universe?
Oh, about the universe.
Anything.
Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot. I have no idea.
Were vampires at one time real?
I think that's up to very interesting interpretation.
That's a yes, I think. Look at that. So yeah, there was something at one point in time in history that inspired the vampire mythos that was very real. Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, I don't even know. I don't even know. You got me on the spot. I have no idea. How about, what do I want to ask about? Oh, so it has to be just a general question about the universe, right?
It could be whatever you want it to be.
Be anything. All right. All right.
I'm thinking about it.
Will my business be successful?
Sorry, hold on just a second.
Just take
my fingers.
Dowsing rods are wild. They have been used for... Oh, I love that.
And it's going round and round. So you know what that means? yes, and it will be all encompassing. There will be many avenues in which your business is going to be successful.
Good.
So that's the way I interpret that, is that yes, and
I
it
said
will
bye.
be encompassing many areas. Yes.
So my I think it's fascinating because I want to talk a little bit about dowsing rods because I don't think people really know what they are. They have been, I want to say, the first dowsing rod. When were they invented?
Called witching rods. We've had them for hundreds of years, and they used to use them to find
Water,
minerals, water beds,
water, and like underground rivers and things. I want to say
they work off the magnetic lines of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you can utilize that in a way, as you saw, to ask questions where they do move around. And so I do feel like our bodies, our auras are EMF fields. They
Mm-hmm.
are magnetic fields. And so I feel like when we use them in that sort of context, it's responding to the intuitive hit that we're getting in our aura. That's how I feel that works.
I feel like that's probably right because way back in the day, I used to be a paranormal investigator. I mean, you don't ever stop doing that, but I mean, it was one of my like early projects, I guess. I was with the SoCal Paranormal Society, and I just dug up a bunch of pictures. We used some real old equipment. Like, I was like, oh man, we were hauling little TVs and stuff around.
Vintage ghost hunting equipment.
It was crazy. But I had learned a lot about. Some people have the little EMF readers. Some people have a field. So that is entirely possible. Like if you put up a reader to somebody and they're very like connected or whatever.
You've also seen those cameras that you can put on people that will show like when someone's doing a psychic reading, their auras start
change,
doing this where they start touching.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of crazy.
Very interesting. Yes, it's very interesting.
It's fascinating. It's a fascinating thing.
Well, we know through astrophysics that we are vibrationary magnetic beings.
Mm-hmm.
We're just oscillating beings.
We're all atoms.
Finely compacted into space.
Yeah.
And
so no, that's
fun how like science is kind of catching up to that.
I'm glad that I'm glad that a lot of paranormal investigators these days, I know we're kind of totally segueing off base, but
it's okay.
I'm super glad that a lot of paranormal investigators these days are doing the work to try to scientifically disprove some of the things that they've found.
Yes.
Because I feel like that's so important. We can't just sit here and look at our little photos of orbs and be like, that's a ghost, because that's just not going to cut it these days. Like, you know what I mean?
Unless it means something personally to you, then yeah, it's a completely different thing. Like, for example, one of my cousins just passed away about 2 months ago. And I was talking to her mom, and her mom sent me this video of her Ring camera where this orb was just like hanging out in front of the house. And I'm like, wow. And it's not for, at that point, it's not for me to say that, oh, maybe it's a bug or something like that, because that's what she got out of it. You understand? When we're paranormal investigating, and that's the key difference between being a professional medium and being a paranormal investigator, right? There is that distinction where in paranormal investigating, we're trying to debunk. That's the main thing.
Right. When my dad passed, we have had this whole thing with moths. It's like a really weird thing.
Yeah.
And so when my dad passed, my brother saw one and I saw a similar one, and then I was traveling and then I saw another one that was very similar, and it was just like, it was like following, and this idea of this moth has been following us, so it's kind of become a symbol. Yeah. So I totally understand that. I get that. But yeah, I'm so glad we got to talk today, because this was fascinating, and I had such a good time discussing so much awesome witchy business stuff with you.
Fringe stuff, yeah, that you don't get to talk about too much, so that's great.
So where can everyone find you online?
Yeah, so I have a website called www.theprofitablepsychic.com. That's where you're going to find a lot of my like professional trainings. I have courses to help you start your business and to start getting sales. I also have a Discord channel. I'll get you guys the link for that so you guys can come in and hang out with the community. I have lots of trainings. Like I said, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. So I have literally I have hundreds of hours of content available, even just on my YouTube that you can watch for free. And then I have hundreds of hours of content that's premium content that you can purchase if you're really serious about, building a business or getting in touch with your life purpose. I'm also on Instagram. I don't spend too much time on there anymore, but usually I'm in the Discord. That's the best place to find me.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for having an incredibly insightful conversation with us. I hope some of our listeners actually take some things away from our conversation today, because I feel like it was very insightful. I know I said that several times, but it was like, I thought it was great. You are a wonderful person. Thank you. I'm gonna say love and light because you deserve it.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was being a little facetious.
I know, that's it.
And I appreciate you for coming on the show. You can listen to the Coffin Lounge anywhere podcasts are syndicated. Coffin Lounge is available on YouTube, iTunes, Audible, Spotify, anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. Please subscribe. Please let us know who you'd like to see on the show next. And thank you all. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time.